Vocation is the calling, an invitation. And first of all, it comes from God. And it's very important to realize that, because God already gave that calling to my parents. My parents were very, very religious people. They could have been canonized, but parents at that time were not being canonized. So that's where I get my vocation from God, through my parents, of course. My mother had a very great devotion to Jesus, the Eucharist. The great devotion was evident. Even as a child or as a family, we as children recognized that Mom had a great devotion to Jesus, and my dad, great devotion to Mary. My mother said once in a while she always wanted to be a nun, but my dad came along and told her he'd like to marry me, so I changed my mind. We had an Oblate parish, an Oblate priest, and there were a lot of Oblates in the area who had influence on me in school, because many of the Oblates from the north, from Canada, they were missionaries in Canada. They came down to the area and to visit the Oblates in the area. There were 3 or 4 or 5 Oblate parishes in my immediate area. And so we had these Oblates as missionaries. And I would always say, as a student, when these Oblates were in the parish, I'd always say, that's the type of missionary I would like to be. And in 2nd grade, they taught us in preparation for Holy Communion that when you go to make your first communion, Jesus, you can ask him anything that you want, because he is so happy to come to you for the first time that he wants you to know he loves you, he wants to be recognized, and he will give you whatever you ask for. And in 2nd grade, we as students, that was quite an influence on us to think that Jesus would give you anything that you want. And the fact is, I tried it. I went to a corner somewhere where I was by myself, and I remembered what the nun said on the day of my first communion, and I was going to meet Jesus in this corner, and I did. I talk about an engagement, an encounter with Jesus at an early age, which, again, in retrospect, was of utmost importance, because you remember it very, very vividly the rest of your life. So I was in the corner talking to Jesus. I said to Jesus, as I was talking to him, I said, Jesus, what do you want me to do when I get old, when I get big? That's the way I put it. What do you want me to do when I get big? Because at that time, I was kind of wondering about the missionaries being there in school already, and what Jesus would want me to do when I get big. And you know what he said? He told me, he said, well, Clarence, how about being a priest? And of course, I was totally, totally surprised, and I didn't know how to handle that. Totally surprised how to handle that. I looked at him, we both smiled at each other, and I remember that like it's an encounter with Jesus, an encounter. You like to use the word encounter, because I have had many, many encounters with Jesus, because of this first one that I was familiar with. It was such a beautiful encounter. And you know what he said? Clarence, how about being a priest? And, you know, we looked at each other, we smiled. You know, what I told him, I said, Jesus, I'm too dumb, I'll never make it. You know what he said? Clarence, don't worry, I'll help you. And that was the end of the conversation. That was the end of the encounter for that particular occasion, which I never, never forgot. It was such a beautiful encounter with Jesus on my vocation. At the end of my 4th year high school, I picked up the Catholic Digest, and in the Catholic Digest there were many, many seminaries advertising like they do even nowadays, Catholic Digest. I wrote about 5 or 6 of them, and there's one that I wrote to St. Henry Seminary here in Belleville. And the superior of St. Henry's, Father Getz, I remember his name very distinctly, he said, I will come to see you on the 15th of August. So sure enough, 15th of August, he came to see me in the farm. Father Getz, superior of St. Henry Seminary here in Belleville, and I'm way up there in Minnesota. And he signs me up for St. Henry Seminary for my 2 years of college. My first day at St. Henry Seminary, my first day, they had a departure ceremony for missionaries going to the Philippines. And it was a brother and I think 1 or 2 priests departure ceremony, and I went to that, and I was deeply, deeply impressed to see a departure ceremony which I've never heard about, which I've never seen, but I enjoyed a departure ceremony for 2 Oblate missionaries going to the Philippines, a brother and a priest. They were later on killed in a war. I never, never, never in my life doubted my vocation, but the fact is it wasn't always easy. Jesus doesn't lie. Don't worry, I will help you. And then that's not only one day for my exam there, but every day somehow or other. Jesus, let me know, Clarence, don't worry. I said to him one time, well, Jesus, I have a plan for myself, and that's another encounter with Jesus. I have a plan, for this or for that. He says, Clarence, I have a plan for you too. Wow, what am I going to do or say? Thank you, Jesus, you're in charge.